Hearts Full of Midnight, Chapter 11. She rolled up her sleeve and showed a bruise on her arm near the elbow joint. The purplish discoloration had 3 pink gaps in it, delineating where Ed's fingers had grabbed her when he started to shake. I guess my crying out is what shook Denton loose because he jumped up all of a sudden and lit into Eddie. He was only supposed to warn him off. I know Denton. He's not a violent man. He would never have given anyone more than a warning, but he really let Eddie have it, Mr. Hardwood. But good. Was Eddie taking it part of the act? I asked. Mrs. Burgess swallowed hard. I don't think so. The money was just to get fresh, then back down when Denton wagged a finger in Eddie's face. At best, a sock to the jaw, you know? I just wanted him to do something that wasn't the same old Denton. How far did your husband go? Bad enough that the other bouncer and a couple of men from nearby tables had to pull him off. I'd never seen such a look in a man's eyes before. He was speaking, saying something, but it wasn't real words. I tell you, Mr. Hardwood, it was like seeing a caveman attack Eddie. If those men hadn't pulled him off, I think Denton would have murdered him on the spot. It took a while to get him calmed down. And in the meantime, you had to smooth it over with your uncle, let him know the score with Eddie and all that. She nodded. Yes, it wasn't supposed to go that far. Uncle Felix got Denton up to his office to calm him down. They got him a drink, and he was eventually back to himself. How did you know I spoke to my uncle about it? Because Eddie wouldn't still have a job if he'd done what he did, and the house hadn't been in on the maneuver. Ah, yes. You hadn't thought of that, had you, before you hired Ed to pull that stunt? Well, I always knew I could speak with my uncle about it if anything happened. He's a sweet man, really. He even got Eddie a taxi ride over to the hospital to get his face looked at when it was over. He was a mess. After the cops left? They never came. A critic from the Times was in to see the Regalites, and he wrote about the fight instead. I guess that's how it made the papers. The police heard about it later and came in to question us. We didn't press charges, and neither did Eddie, so they don't care. I took in a deep breath and let it out slowly. Sally Burgess was at the end of her story, and I let it all sink in. And they all lived happily ever after, I said. I slapped my knees to put an end to it and stood to leave, taking my fedora from the coffee table. Aren't you going to ask me how I got this? She asked, showing me the bruise on her face. I already did, and you were like a clam about it. Anyway, I know well enough how you got it, Mrs. Burgess. Up until a day ago, your husband was just some guy. Normal, regular habits, affable. No dirt on him. But you couldn't stand that. You had to make him into something else, or you would go mad. So you did just that thing. I say congratulations. You did what I couldn't do, which was find something new about him that you didn't already know. You know now, he's got a limit. Push him past that point and he's dangerous. I don't know if that was there before or if it was born in that minute when he saw you getting roughed up, but it's there now. I went to the door and she followed. Well, I suppose you've gotten what you came for, she said. You can go back to your life now. Stop looking for us in the papers, Mr. Hardwood. I stepped out onto the landing and settled my hat on top of my head. One of you is going to end up in the morgue because of your stunt, Mrs. Burgess. Now, perhaps it's my morbid curiosity, or perhaps it's my hope that I'm wrong, but I'm going to keep looking for mention of one of you there. Listen, that part of your husband that loses control, You now have to decide if you're going to ever let that monster inside him loose again, or if you're going to let happy, boring old Denton live his life the way he wants to live it. My hope is that you'll let sleeping dogs lie, but my money is on you finding another way to push his buttons. She looked down then, finally feeling shame. I suppose you're right, she whispered. Then I'm going to keep looking for you in the papers, Mrs. Burgess. And when the day finally comes, I'm going to find whichever one of you is still standing afterwards, and I'm going to offer my services to help in any way I can. Why? I don't know. Damn me, but I don't know. I do know one thing, though. If you haven't told your husband about you hiring Ed Sparks, you better do so. If not, he may not be at work right now. He might be out hunting your friend down with a tire iron. In fact, you might want to make sure that pistol's still in his underwear drawer. And don't say that isn't who he is, because I think after the other night, all bets are off. I started down the steps then. Mrs. Burgess watched me go, saying nothing else, but I hoped, there it was again, that she was weighing what I'd said. The smart play would have been to pack her bags and leave. Leaving would take away the temptation to find a way to turn out that animal in her husband's eyes. Go somewhere far away, use her uncle's money and influence to set her up somewhere else so that the day I saw for her marriage didn't come. I'd have driven her to the bus station or the airport if that was what she wanted. But who could even know? Maybe her running away was the next way to send her husband into one of his newfound rages. And I'd be just enough of a fool to step in between two lovers when they were in the midst of a war. Out on the street I looked left, then right. Nothing caught my eye, so I stopped an older fellow tottering along who looked like he might know. Say, Mac, I said, there a watering hole around here somewhere? I could use something cold and wet. The old Irish down a ways and across the street, he said, pointing south. The old Irish? Run by a Mexican fella, go figure. He squinted at me. He had bushy eyebrows, which made it seem all the more profound when he said, If you don't mind me asking, it's a little early in the day for that, isn't it? It is, I replied. If you come along, it could be early in the day for you too. My treat. A big smile broke out on his face, and he chuckled. He keeps his beer especially cold, he said. Then let's waste no time. It's hot today already, and it's only going to get hotter before it's done. Before skipping off with my newfound drinking buddy, I took one last look at the stairs up to the Burgesses' apartment. It was noon out, as bright as it could be for the day, and yet the whole of the place seemed thrown into darkness. Long shadows were all around it, which should have been impossible at such a time. But there they were, just the same. And upstairs, I couldn't see into the windows. The curtains weren't drawn either. There was just no light to see by. Odd, I said, and we moved on. Thus endeth the tale. This is author L. Joseph Shasti speaking. I hope y'all enjoyed Hearts Full of Midnight. As you may know, the story is taken from my series The Hardwood Case Files, featuring my actor-turned-private eye, Johnny Hardwood. I've been writing installments in the series for, over a decade now, and the story you've just heard is actually one of my favorites. The story really has its origins in a big pile of failure. I'd made no less than 5 attempts to write a sequel to the first book in the series, which is called The Diner Con, and I was really just stuck in a rut. I felt like I had written nearly a perfect story with the first installment, and everything that came after it was just, it was so normal. And the Diner was written in such a crazy fashion, and there was such outlandish characters and things going on that I felt like the books that I were writing were decent, but they were just normal, and I don't like normal. I can't stand it. And so I went back to the drawing board, and I thought about the things that make me happy, in relation to the mystery and thriller genres. And one of the things that I really loved was Alfred Hitchcock. I've been a fan of Hitchcock since I was a little kid, believe it or not. I used to watch Alfred Hitchcock Presents on TV every week when I was about 7, 8 years old. And my very first Hitchcock film was Rear Window. I think I watched that when I was like 13 or 14. So I've been a big fan for a long time. And one of the things I always loved about Hitchcock was the way it seemed like he was taking snapshots of real life and then photoshopping strange elements into these snapshots. And that's really kind of a hallmark of the Hardwood case files. Johnny Hardwood does not deal with normal situations. Now, is there anything supernatural to it? No, but there's always this feeling of something not being right, and I really love that part of the series. And it's definitely become, the weirdness has become part of its hallmark, and I wanted people to know from the beginning that this is not real life. I want it to read like a traditional private eye novel, but I also want people to know that I am crafting an homage to the genre as well. But it's an homage that has a definite Shastian feel, if you will, because again, weirdness is one of my favorite things. So yeah, and speaking of weird, one of the most important things when I was writing the story was I was thinking a lot about the past. And about 20 years ago, a friend of mine who had read a number of my stories made a comment to me. She said, "Death is a main character in every one of your stories." I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I can't recall a piece I've written that didn't have in some way my morbid fascinations helping to energize my creativity. And for this story, because I was so stuck in a rut, and the Johnny Hardwood series is really up to here with death and mayhem, to break out of that rut, I wanted to write a story that doesn't have a body count. And it took quite a bit, because by that point, as I said, I'd written 5 books almost in their entirety each time. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of words. So I already had a very clear idea of how I wanted the character to grow and be. And it took a lot of effort to break out of that cycle and to go back and unlearn everything I had learned about the character, and to write him again as if I didn't know who he was quite just yet. And doing so, I really feel like I energized myself again. It made me want to continue the series, because at that point I had been seriously thinking about stopping the entire series entirely. Hearts Full of Midnight played a big role in making sure that the series continued, and I am, if it's possible to be grateful to an inanimate thing like a story, then I am definitely grateful to this story for helping me realize that I really did want to continue. And it's funny, because I think about it But even without someone dying in this story, the specter of death is still a character hanging over the Burgesses' marriage. So try as I might, death may not be a main character in this story, but he's definitely waiting in the wings for his big moment. Because it's like Johnny says, unless something changes, somebody is going to the morgue. Anyway, that wraps that up. And in 2 weeks, we will begin a new story called AFK. And it's about a man named Bobby Hughes, a rather beleaguered journalist working for a men's lifestyle magazine. And he is given the job of helping out a mysterious woman who has written a manuscript. And in that manuscript, she details the disappearance of an entire group of people. And it soon becomes known to Bobby that these people are real. What starts off as what seems like a fictitious manuscript, eventually he does realize that it is, in fact, a true story. And he has to find out the circumstances and solve the mystery of these missing people. And like I said in my my newsletter not too long ago, I said that we had a poll, of course, and I wanted to know what y'all wanted to read or listen to next. And while the clear majority was mystery, there was a very large push for a fantasy story. And so I didn't quite meet y'all in the middle, you fantasy fans. I didn't quite meet y'all in the middle on this one, but the missing people are people who play a massive multiplayer online RPG called, I believe it's called Ebon Downs or something along those lines. It's in the manuscript somewhere I've been typing away at for the last 2 weeks. And it involves a fantasy role-playing game, which is about as close as I can come at this point. And we're going to all join Bobby in his journey, and hopefully you guys love it. I know right now I'm enjoying writing it. I was reading through it tonight just going, this is lovely. So anyway, that wraps it up for us, and I hope to see you guys back here in 2 weeks. Have a happy 4th of July. That's when we're recording this. We're on July 2nd, so I'm getting ready to launch my latest newsletter in a couple of hours. You guys should be receiving it. And happy 4th of July. I hope everybody has a good time. I hope you pop some fireworks and eat a hot dog, and hopefully that hot dog doesn't make you sick. Have a good time, and I will see you again.